Hello again, everyone. Welcome to another live edition of Mic'd Up Sports, the show that goes in depth with the people who build our sports community. If you're watching us live on Facebook, we're glad you can join us this afternoon. And if you're watching us on our YouTube channel or wherever you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc., we're happy to have you with us there too. Joining me is Shantell Harden, who will be a senior at St. Louis Park. Actually, I guess, next week is when you start your senior year officially.
Yeah.
And after her senior year, she will continue her basketball career as a member of MSU Mankato, Minnesota State-Mankato, formerly known as Mankato State. They reached the Division II women's basketball tournament last year. And Shantell, I'm sure you're excited to add to that chapter when you get there. But thanks for joining us. And what has the mood, the atmosphere been like for you? You got your college commitment out of the way. You finished up your last year of AAU. And I imagine this is a pretty exciting time for you.
Yeah. Well, first, I'd like to say thanks for having me. I think the mood and just like the overall feeling of being able to like find my home for my next year after high school's over, and then being able to just kind of be stress-free into the rest of my AAU season was really nice. It took like a little bit of pressure off my shoulders, and then going into it, I just kind of thought about, I just need to play how I always play, and I don't have to worry about like the things of trying to get coaches' attention and stuff, because I was happy where I was at.
And if Shantell doesn't ring a bell, I'll give you a sense of her capabilities. 14 double-doubles last season, including a couple of stretches where she had 5 in a row. Now, St. Louis Park is in the same section as Hopkins and Wayzata, so it can be a little tough to get your name out there with a crowded field like that. But what excites you as you head into your senior season after a terrific junior year where after getting through those first few games, you turned into a walking double-double?
Yeah, I'm just overall excited for showing out and just like making my name known and like giving me that, I guess, like publicity that I feel like I deserve. And I just want to play my best basketball and continue to grow on that, because I feel like last year after those first couple games, I did kind of turn it on, and like my goal for this year is just to turn it on right from the beginning and just kind of show everybody what I'm capable of.
And if you don't mind, Shantell, take us through that junior season, because a lot of top players, usually they're consistent, and sometimes you go through some turbulence, some headwinds, as you did, but you had that slow start. You scored just 2 points in the first game of the season against Farmington. You got the win, and I think just about any player would tell you they ultimately don't care about points at the end of the day if they can get a win out of it. But it took you a little while. I think it was Edina where you got your first double-double of the season, where you turned that proverbial corner. So what was that like in the early part of the season, having to go through some bumps where maybe you didn't feel you were performing to the best of your ability? And then as the season went along, you started racking up a bunch of big games in terms of points and rebounds.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not one for like excuse making. I always would like to take accountability for everything I do. But I think that what really had happened just like at the beginning was we had a new transfer, which was Salama. She's from Hopkins. Yeah. So me and her had played AAU in the beginning of the season. So we were kind of like acclimated with each other, but just going into it, like St. Louis Park had been going through a lot of transfers, even with me my first year. So it was kind of like we all had to continue to like get to know each other again at the beginning of the season. And those first couple of games, like I had played with her before, but like I guess I wasn't really ready to like play with a star like she is, like how she turns it on and stuff. And I kind of just let her take over games because I knew she was able to. And I kind of was like, okay, I'll just kind of stand here, and if she needs my help, I'll help out. But I mean, most of those games I played defense pretty well, which is like kind of where my consistency is at right now, like working on keeping my offense there. But defensively, I'm always pretty much on my A game. So it was like I kind of just focused on defense and then let her kind of take the ball and control the game. So I feel like within those first couple games, it was just kind of like I wasn't playing as like the star I was, I guess. I was just kind of like, all right, she can do it. She can handle it. If she needs my help, I'll turn it on then. And then my coaches were kind of like, yeah, that's not a thing. Like, you need to be who you are and score for us, because then we're not going to win when we play these other teams, because we can't just leave it all to her. And I was like, yeah, you're right. So that was kind of where the turning point was. And I was like, okay, yeah, I probably should try to go get some points now, shoot the ball a little bit more than I am.
Shantell, did you forget that basketball is a team sport?
Yeah.
I mean, Salam's a great player, but you don't win 1-on-5.
I know. I have a thing where I'm a pass first person a lot of the time. So it was like, I may be bringing down the ball, but if I know she's open and she can shoot that volleyball line 3, I'm passing it to her. And it's like, in my head, I don't think of like, oh, my teammate's open and she's calling for the ball. Okay, here you go. I'll cut, set you a screen. Let's go. Let's get a point. But a lot of times, especially with our team at St. Louis Park, we're not as loaded as the other teams we play. So then it had to turn on. I had to be like, okay, yeah, I can't just go set the screen and get the rebound and get my points that way. I need to actually go drive at the basket, which I'm good at. I need to shoot my shots, which I'm good at. So I don't know. My pass first mentality has always kind of been a blocker for me a little bit here and there when it comes to scoring.
So what should we expect this year? Because Salam, she's in college now. I think Smith College, if my memory serves correctly. So you can't just feed her the ball anymore. You might have to score first now.
Yeah, so I mean, since AAU, I've been working on that a lot. Like, even the AAU season, like, I was focusing on, okay, I need to go get my points. I need to try things and I need to make myself uncomfortable, because I am a person that's like a creature of habit almost. Like, I like to be comfortable. I like to do what I know I'm good at. And I know going into my senior year, since we don't have a lot of players and we don't have any transfers left, so I kind of told myself and like had a conversation with myself, and I was like, all right, it's time where you get to step up and you need to do it all on your own. And I mean, I have my teammates, obviously, of course, but in my head, I have to go into it thinking like, I need to be the leader. I need to be the person who's facilitating the game, who's getting the points, who's controlling the tempo and the speed and all that. So that's kind of how I'm looking at going into this high school season, just stepping up and like not having lapses and almost kind of like putting the team on my back and telling them like I got them and I can lead them through this season.
And Shantell, if you don't mind, let's go back to the beginning as we'll find out just what you're made of as a scorer. I'm pretty sure when I looked at your numbers, I think you'll do just fine. But what was your first itch? What was your first memory that you recall that got you hooked on the sport of basketball?
Yeah, so my family was a basketball family. Pretty much everyone, like my mom, my grandpa, my sister, like we all played basketball. And I just remember like as a little kid, I go to my sister's high school games, and at halftime I'd go on the court, run up and down, do a bunch of killers and do like some layups and stuff, just like, and I think that kind of led me into like really wanting to play. And then if I remember correct, third grade traveling basketball is kind of when it started. It was still like in-house was the last year, and I just remember being super upset because I wasn't allowed to cross half court and steal the ball from the girls. And ever since then, I've always kind of like wanted to just be aggressive and go take the ball. And I think that like big spark for me was like, okay, yeah, I truly like it, because I'm getting upset about rules that I can't change and that are put in place for the little girls that aren't really good at dribbling quite yet. And it's like, I'm ready to take the ball out of their hands before they're even taking 2 dribbles. So it was like, I think it all kind of sparked from my family always being around basketball and putting me around basketball. And then just like having that, like, I guess you kind of said itch for like wanting to take the ball from the people. I wanted to go score all the points. Like I wanted to do that since probably 3rd grade. So I'd say about then.
So your desire to play came from an irritation of having to play within the rules. So it sounded like, hey, you were, it's like, all right, I've got this down pat. What am I doing here?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. So I think it stems from just being from a basketball family. And then like when I got put into it, I felt like I was for sure, I'd say probably more advanced than most of the people I was playing with at the time, because of the fact that it's like I had been playing since I was so young. And in like third grade, a lot of people are probably just starting. And it was just kind of, yeah, I guess you'd say the irritation for like me being ready to move up in the rules, and like nobody else is allowing me to do that. So I was just like, all right, I want more. Like I need more. Like I need to do this all the time, so I'm not irritated about these rules.
You mentioned coming from a basketball family. Who were your idols in the sport? The people you looked up to? They could be family members, they could be players you watched growing up. As you were a third grader trying to level up and play alongside people who could match your skill set, who were the athletes you idolized?
Yeah, so I think I've always kind of looked up to Simone Augustus. I don't know, she just kind of stuck out to me like when I would go to Lynx games with my mom and stuff. Like I guess if I picked anyone, she like stood out to me. I loved how she played. I loved that she went to LSU for a while. That was my dream school. It was like I loved everything about like her, and I would watch YouTube videos and they'd be like, yeah, she's got like an old school jump shot. And I was like, I want an old school jump shot. Like, I want to be cool like that. Like, I want YouTube videos about me like that. I think her and Brianna Stewart, so that's kind of a newer one because she's a little younger, but like ever since she's kind of been in the game, she's stuck out to me a little bit because I feel like in a way, in a sense, we're kind of almost, we're pretty much built the same. We're long, skinny, but we don't play that post position. Like people who like her, like Candace Parker, like we're tall, we're big, like we're big guards. And I've always kind of enjoyed that, like that title, because like, yeah, I am pretty tall, like I'm 6 feet tall, but I don't play that post position very much. That's not really where I like would put myself at. I enjoy being at the wing. I enjoy being in the two guard spot, power forward, like those kind of positions. So those players to me like really stood out for a while. So I'd say Simone Augustus and Brianna Stewart.
Simone and Stewie. I got to cover Simone when she was playing for the Lynx. I covered the league for 10 years. Simone was quite the goofball, but you're right. She had a terrific jump shot and an absolutely outstanding score. And she wasn't afraid to have fun at everyone else's expense. I was a frequent target of her quips when I was a Lynx media member, especially the first year when they won the championship. Oh, she really had some fun with me. So I don't know if you have that rascal streak within you, Shantell, but Simone does bring back some memories.
Yeah. I mean, I've also like noticed that too, like just watching things about her and like going to the games, like she never was like the super like, oh, like I'm here to rip your head off. Like I'm that kind of, and that's kind of how I felt like I kind of connected to her, because I'm not super vicious on the court. I'm not super like dog eats dog out there. Like I'm pretty chill and I just kind of go and try to do my own game. And I feel like I kind of like connected with her with that. I loved how she could be so goofy. Like she'd sub off and she'd be making jokes all the way down the bench. And it's like, okay, that's hilarious. Like I want to be like that.
You touched on something that I like to bring up with several of my guests who are taller than me. You mentioned reaching 6 feet. The common refrain I get from guests who are taller than me are finding clothes and shoes that would fit. What was your experience growing up being one of the taller figures, I imagine, in the class? On the basketball court, maybe a different story because you're going up against wings and posts and guards of a similar build. But for you, what was that experience like growing up?
I'd say growing up, like for the most of my years, I was like kind of, I guess, younger. I was always taller than everyone, but like it wasn't like a super big difference until like middle school. But like clothes wise, that I remember that sucked because I wanted to be a really girly girl when I was younger, and it was like, oh, I can't find jeans that are super cute but also long enough to like cover my ankles. Like, oh, I can't find the cute shoes because I have bigger size feet for the kids. Like it was tough, like getting used to it, but then like going into probably like fifth grade, sixth grade, those beginning middle school years, like I started to kind of accept the fact like, okay, I'm probably the tallest in my grade for girls. Boys are starting to grow, but don't really care. Like, I'm taller than all the girls here, so that's all everybody wants to talk about all the time. And it was just kind of like I started to accept it, and like I was able to find the clothes, the shoes I wanted at that point. But it was like, yeah, I just remember being younger, wanting to be a super girly girl, and it was like it sucked because they don't make those super little girl skirts like long enough for people with super long legs that are like dress code appropriate for school. Like it's just like it does suck like growing up for sure.
Well, I appreciate your willingness to abide by dress code regulations, Shantell, because otherwise
Yeah,
that could have been really awkward. I
for
was
sure.
trying not to laugh, and not at you, because I've covered women's sports for a long time between basketball and volleyball. So I'm used to meeting with athletes who are taller than me, but trying to find skirts that fit, but also fit within regulations. That's a new wrinkle. I haven't heard that one before.
Yeah, it was tough. Third grade was tough because I got long legs and it's like they're always like the fingertip rule. And I'm like, I got long arms too. So this isn't like, I don't know what you want me to do here. Like my fingertips almost touch my knees sometimes in shorts and stuff. So it's like, I don't want to wear shorts that go down to my knees. Those aren't shorts. Now I'm wearing capris. Like it was tough for sure.
You have, I guess, what I would call Elastigirl-like arms, if you understand the reference. Then, if they just are
Yeah.
super long, and I met a lot of athletes in volleyball and basketball have really long wingspans. Sometimes when I've taken selfies with them, I'll usually ask my guests to do it because their arms are much longer than mine, or at least they can get out a little farther. But
Yeah,
I imagine it offers some advantages when you're playing basketball and volleyball.
it does. It really does. I mean, I at first I used to hate my length for sure. I think a lot of I mean, I'm not going to speak on the whole female athlete like community, but I'm sure a lot of people have that time where they just feel like awkward in their body because they're growing so fast. Because I was like a fast girl, like I just shot up, and then it was like I was done. But like getting used to that being long and like reaching and stuff, like I'm a big when it comes to basketball and defense, I'm a big reacher. I like I said, even in third grade, I couldn't stand the fact that I couldn't steal the ball. Like I've always just wanted to take the ball. Like if you're gonna dribble in front of me, I'm gonna put my hand in there and I'm gonna hope to get that steal and not the foul. But it's just kind of like with those long arms and wingspan, it definitely has helped, and it's kind of helped put me into a position where I love to play on defense. Like I love being the top of the zones. I love being the person that's pressuring you while you're in a press because I have those long arms. So it's like, yes, please make that pass so I can get the steal. Like it's fun for sure. Once you get used to it and get comfortable in your body and you understand how it like can be used to your advantage, is definitely a big plus.
And it sounds like now you don't have as much difficulty finding apparel that fits you.
Yeah, no, thankfully.
Um, well, I won't ask about the skirts because although I imagine that you might have found one down the road, or maybe you'll find one in college. I have no idea, but I'd like to think that someone out there, there's at least one outfitter that would make apparel that would fit your long wingspan and your long
Yeah.
legs and your lengthy frame, and then you can embrace that identity you were striving for back in third grade.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like a lot of companies now, they make tall sizes, which I love because it's like I'd say probably one of my favorite like jean brands, American Eagle. They make their jeans in talls, which is super helpful, or extra tall. And then it's like they fit the way you want them to fit versus like you have to get a size where they kind of fit, but they're not how like you want them to fit. So I definitely have been able to find the companies and the places where I know I can guarantee get what I want and how I want it. So that's been good. And I think that just kind of came with time and like growing up, I guess, and finding where to look.
So as you were making your way up, not satisfied with your progression in third grade, being a step or two ahead of everyone, when did you get the feeling that this exploration of basketball could take you places?
Yeah, I would say probably going into maybe my so like probably like fifth grade year is when I like realized like, okay, like I'm good and other people see I'm good, because that's when they started asking me to play up, and I play on my grade and the upper team, like for the summer, like traveling teams that they'd have. And I feel like within that, I was just like, okay, so like I'm beating all these kids that are my age, and now I'm doing good against kids that are older than me. Like it made me feel like secure, and I like kind of knew like, okay, I clearly am good at the sport that I'm doing right now. And it's like, I know that I can continue to do this in the future. And I feel like that was a big like thing for me, is when they started asking me to play up and started to like older people were like having trouble guarding me, or they were having trouble scoring on me. And it was like, okay, like I know what I'm doing and I know I'm doing it good.
And then you settled on St. Louis Park. What have you learned through that experience? You had to navigate through the COVID year within your high school career, but as we mentioned in the open, St. Louis Park, they've had some solid players move through. Kendall Coley, who's at Nebraska, Kia Hagdahl, who is a three-point marksman. I've seen her play on Minnesota Stars in the AAU season. You mentioned the transfers. I recall Tanae Griffin, I think, played at St. Louis Park for a year. So, and in high school, there's always going to be moving pieces no matter where you go. But again, St. Louis Park, stuck in a crowded section. Hopkins and Wayzata have dominated a lot of the coverage in recent years. So maybe you don't get as much attention as the other schools, but for you, what do you make of your experience, your time at St. Louis Park, and how do you think that has helped you grow?
Yeah, I would for sure say like the way St. Louis Park kind of carries himself is really like big family mentality, and that's kind of like helped me within the fact of like feeling so like comfortable and almost like I'd say like loved here. And I mean, yeah, we don't get the coverage that I feel like we necessarily deserved in years past, for sure. Like my first year here, I played like Kendall didn't play my first year here. That's when she decided to go to Nebraska early. But I played with Reagan Alexander and Tanae and Cece, who transferred back home after that year. But it was fun. Like I felt like we were a great team, and it was just like being able to like play with other people that like looked like me and like I could relate to, and just have that like big family like mentality between, from the coaches to the players to even like the people that work in the athletic department. Like it was good. It was nice. It felt right. It felt right to be here. So it was like navigating wise, like it didn't feel like I was lost, like to like figure out stuff on my own and try to find out where I fit in and stuff. Like I was able to just be kind of like throw myself in there and be accepted right away and just like click with everybody.
And that's always important, finding a fit. Would it be nice to win state championships? I'm sure everyone would like to do that. But if you find a place where you feel you belong, that you feel will be beneficial to your experience, and that's a big takeaway. Sometimes we might lose sight of that in the midst of all the rankings and records and all the other stuff that
Yeah.
I feel can interfere with the high school experience.
Yeah, that's for sure. Like, as like you said, we are in a pretty big section, like a tough section to be in, and it's like a lot of people just don't really have hope. Like going into sections, they're like, all right, we know we can go first round, but then we got to meet Wayzata. Like, are we gonna hold up to them this year? And I feel like my first year here, we met Wayzata in the second round, and we definitely didn't play our best game, nowhere near it. And it was kind of disappointing because in our heads, we all felt to ourselves like, okay, we could have done way better than that. And if we would have, then we probably would have had a better outcome than what we did. So we were all kind of disappointed. But I think even last year, we were kind of like less hopeful because we were like, all right, we have even less now going into this round of Wayzata game. But we actually held up, and like we played them pretty tough towards the end. We had our lapses and all, but I think if we just kind of get out of that whole like, okay, we're playing Wayzata, like we don't have a chance, we would have played way better, and we would have just had more confidence going into the game. And I think that's the problem. It's just like because we feel like the underdogs, we don't have much confidence going into the game, and then we're kind of like not playing to our best abilities. So I think like the whole big thing, especially this year, I'm going to work on like, let's just go into the games with confidence so we can play the way we know we can, versus having to come back afterwards and be like, dang, I wish I would have played better because it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be.
Shantell, if I can make a suggestion, I'm a fan of the series Ted Lasso, and I think at the end of the first season, the aforementioned title character, when he took over for Richmond AFC toward the end of the season, he put up a sign that said "Believe" because Ted Lasso is an unflinching optimist. That is one of his character traits, and he just slammed that sign on the way out of the locker room to communicate to his players, believe. And I'm thinking maybe you should try something like that this year if you run into a section where you may have to go against Wayzata or Hopkins. I know Hopkins is going to look a little different this year. Wayzata is going to look different. Well, every school looks different. So I'm not smart enough to make any proclamations about how your postseason would go when the season hasn't started yet, but look up that scene. I'm thinking maybe if you take a page or borrow that, whatever the result is, at the very least, it will change that narrative, because it sounds like you're hoping St. Louis Park can escape that underdog mentality. And I'm sure they understand going in, yeah, we may not be the deepest or strongest team, but I agree with your assessment. Just go in there, think you can win every game, believe you can win every game. And even if you don't,
yeah,
that's okay.
Work hard enough to try. Like, yeah, I think that was for sure looking into that scene, because that sounds great for especially like our girls and stuff. And it's like, just the whole big thing is just like, if we believe we can, at least we can say we probably played our best game then, because then we played hard enough. And then it's like, all right, we just kind of fell short. But like, I am a big hater on feeling like I didn't do all that I can do and say that I did all I can do, because then it's like I could have gave more. I should have gave more. And like, I hate that kind of like hopeless feeling of like, oh, I know I could have done better, but I didn't. So why? So I feel like that's just like the big thing that I hope I can help my teammates like see and stuff, is like, if we go into every game trying our hardest, working our hardest, doing everything we can, then we can, like, obviously we're not going to win every game, but like we could if we gave ourselves that mentality.
Who knows? Maybe you do win every game. It has happened before.
For sure, that has.
But even if you don't, that's fine too. I've stressed, especially the more I do broadcast, the longer I cover games, I tell players, coaches, I don't care what your record is. And I truly throw all that out the window. So when I start a new season, I have to go back and look up, oh, how did this team do? How did this player do?
Yeah.
Because as I was saying earlier, I don't think too many players pay attention to that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm big on, I try to not like dwell on losses, try to not dwell on playing bad. Like, even if we kind of go back to like at the beginning of my junior season, like I did have those, like that low slump in the beginning. And it's like, I still like really push myself to not beat myself up about it, because you're not going to really gain anything from that. And all honesty, you usually end up pushing yourself backwards instead of moving forward. So for sure, hoping we can all focus on the positives this year and just keeping confident, keeping successful, for sure.
And speaking of success, you went through a lot of that, as we stated earlier in the podcast, 14 double doubles as a junior, 2 stretches where you had 5 in a row. And that's not an easy accomplishment, no matter who you play for, no matter what the competition is.
Yeah.
And even with that slow start, I'd say you built off of your sophomore season in a tremendous way. So as you got more playing time and more opportunities to show what you can do, how do you think that further inspired you?
Yeah, I think for me, it's like I said, I like to take a lot of accountability for my actions and stuff. And it was very like it had a lot to do with myself, and just like I said, telling myself I needed to turn it on and I needed to be who I am and play who I am. So I think once I had that like conversation with my coaches where they're like, okay, like it's cool. I was nice. I let you have your little slump, but we need you to figure it out and you need to go and perform how we need you to. And I was kind of like took a step back and I was like, Yeah, you're right. Like, I need to go do what I'm supposed to do. I need to go play the way I'm supposed to play and how I can play. And I think just within that, like building on it, every game I started to feel more and more confident and more like comfortable with what I knew I could do. And it's like I started being like, okay, yeah, we know if I have the ball in the wing, either set a screen or kind of get out of the way because I'm going to try to drive. Like, let me do what I know I'm good at. Let me get my points the way I'm supposed to get my points. And it was just kind of like the coaches realized, like, okay, she stepped it up. All right, I don't have to yell at her anymore about it. We can move on from this point. And I think my teammates as well kind of regained that trust in me and were like, okay, now you're playing how you're supposed to play. Now we know you're the Shantell that we knew. So I think it just kind of came with telling myself I needed to turn it on and keep it on.
And along the way, you found a college home at MSU Mankato. What was your experience in terms of getting recruited? Do you remember when you got your first offer? How many offers did you receive? And what led you to settle on a Division II school when you had childhood aspirations of wearing an LSU uniform?
Yeah, I think the big thing for me was I mean, I'll say it a million times. I don't think a lot of people talk about recruitment the way it should be talked about. A lot of people kind of just make it seem like it's like, oh, you play great games and you get all these offers and you get to go to these schools and you say yes, you say no, and that's how it's not all like rainbows, like how I think a lot of people kind of make it seem. And that was kind of a big shocker for me going into my junior year because I was like, I feel like I'm playing some of my best basketball right now, and it's like I'm not getting the attention that I want to get. Like I'm not getting these schools that say they like me to offer me. So it's like the big thing for me was before I committed, I only had two offers on the table from Minnesota Moorhead, and then Mankato was my second one. But I had a lot of interest and they just weren't really turning into offers. And I tried to kind of give myself that time and like hope they would turn into offers, but it just kind of seemed almost like a lost cause. So then I dove in and like really wanted to like find my home and realize like it had less to do with like the big D1 name schools and more to do with where are you comfortable, where do you know you can be your best athlete at. And I'd say for sure Mankato, after even going on the visit, I was like, I felt like at home. Like the coaches were amazing. The players that took me on my tour were awesome. It was just like, it felt right to be there and it felt like where I wanted to be successful at. And I think just like within it, it is a stressful process, at least for me. A lot of people, it's a little less stressful because they just have either more of a name for themselves or they just performed earlier on than some other people do. So they have their attention for a while. But it definitely wasn't like all like rainbows and roses, like I said, for me, but I'm happy with where like my ending is at.
On that note, you may have seen this message get shared on the social media channels, and it goes back to the sunshine and rainbows that we often see when I see players tweet about their offers. Personally, I'm still on the fence about that, but
Yeah.
it's their channel. So what they do on their social media is their business as long as they're not hurting anybody. But oftentimes with social media, we see the positives and we don't always see the finer details that go into it. But the message that I was referencing is that no matter what level you go to, playing at the college level is a big deal, all the way from D1 to NAIA. So
Yeah.
for you, Shantell, what are you looking forward to playing at a Division II school? You may not get the publicity that a Division I roster spot would offer, but you still get a chance to play. You get an opportunity to play for a contender in the NSIC, and you'll have some pretty solid teammates when you change your color from orange to purple. So what would you say to those who might look and say, Division II, is that the best you can do, if you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, my big thing is like I said, like it was home. Like it felt right. Everything about it was what I wanted from it. There wasn't any complaints I had about being there. And I think that was a big thing for me. And then it was just like the coaches, the coaching staff overall, like I felt that like I want you mentality, and that was awesome. Like they're texting me, they're coming to my games when they could, like my stretch of when we're in AU and we go from Indiana to Chicago to the next place, like they were at all my games in Chicago sitting there, and it was like, oh, okay, so you guys actually are invested in me, like you want me to be there, you want me to play for you. And that was big for me. Like if I didn't have that, I feel like I wouldn't necessarily be as like secure with where I'm at, because I'm like, okay, do they really want me? Do they really like want me to be there? And it's like with that, like that comfortableness, like I said, I like to be comfortable. I like to know and be confident in what I'm doing. And I was super confident in my decision to committing to Mankato. And I think, like I said, the coaches being the way they are and how invested they are in me and coming there, like it really like helped me put my foot like into the door, I guess you would say, like to make that decision. I just think overall, like if there has been people like, oh, this is a D1 kid, why is she at Mankato? And it's just kind of like I gave it the chance. I feel like I gave it the time. I didn't like just jump into my commitment for sure. And it was just kind of like, all right, I gave you guys the chance and you guys kind of just said that you were interested in me, and I needed something more than that. And I needed people that were invested.
And that investment can go a long way. I have another friend who will be a conference rival of yours in a couple of years, but she plays at Concordia now. But I remember covering her in high school, and several opposing coaches thought this athlete, Lindsay Becker is the player I'm talking about, they thought she had Division I potential, and she decided to play at Concordia, and that has worked out brilliantly for her. And she'll be back to play her junior season. So I'd say if that's where you felt at home, if that's where you felt the people who run the ship, if they were invested in you, and it sounds like they showed it with all of the attendance at your AAU tournaments, go where you feel like you belong. And if that is at a Division II school, that's okay. You don't always have to go D1 to prove that you made a difference, to prove that you belong in the sport of basketball.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like if I know, like, and it just had to do with the fact that I know I can perform. I know I can play for them. And I want to always, like I said, perform at my best. And it's like the big name, yeah, going to D1 is really cool. But if you're not performing at your best there, then it's kind of like, why am I here? And a lot of people, I feel like, end up unhappy. And I don't want to be in that position where I'm not happy at where I'm at. So I went with my gut and where my heart was telling me to go. And it said Mankato is where I'll be comfortable, happy, and feel like I said, wanted.
And Mankato, they've got some talent at their high schools as well. There's quite the pipeline in Mankato. I got to see both East and West last year. Well, Mankato East, I should say. Didn't see Mankato West, but they're building something down there.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And you'll get to be a part of that at the college level. I will say, Shantell, if there are any openings for an announcer, feel free to drop a reference for me. I tease.
Yeah.
That is one of my goals, is to find my way to a college assignment to get a little more stability, but I can't complain with where I'm at right now. So with that wrapped up, knowing that whatever happens in your senior year, you still have a future in this sport. You spoke of the stress that won't accompany you with the college decision out of the way. What do you expect we'll see in your senior year with your spot secured at MSU Mankato? You're done with AAU. You've seen a lot of your friends go through it. Salam Maher had a terrific senior season before she went off to college. I would like to think you'll have just as much of a chance to go out big the way she did. But what are you looking forward to most as you begin this last chapter of high school?
Yeah, I'm looking like looking forward to most, probably just having fun with it. Like I said, like I just want to like, because I'm not worried about making that big decision anymore, and I've kind of like changed my mentality of like, instead of beating myself up, like I'm uplifting myself. So it's just kind of like I'm looking forward to like just going out there and playing my best basketball and having fun with it at the end of the day. Like I don't want to be regretful at the end of the season because there's no going back. So it's kind of like I just want to move forward and, like I said, just overall have fun and like lead my team for sure. That's like a big goal I have. I want to lead my team and kind of like let them know that like I got this and I can help them and I'm there for them.
And even though I noted that players don't often keep track of stats, you did average 17.8 points per game and 9.5 rebounds last year, Shantell. Mm-hmm. Are we going to see you average a double-double this season?
Yeah, for sure. I do have that goal of hitting that 1,000 points. So I do have kind of the numbers worked up and stuff for me. And it's just kind of like, I don't want to put pressure on myself too much to hit that mile marker, but I'm not too far away. So that's the good part about it, at least. But I think for sure, stat line wise, I want it to be better than last year. Obviously, in reality, I want to average a triple double, but I'm definitely secure with averaging a higher point, probably a little more rebound, double double for sure. I don't plan on coming down from that.
Well, I'll hold you to it. So if you come up shy of that double double, I might be asking, "Hey, what happened?"
Okay, I got it.
I kid, of course. It's harder than it looks. But yeah. Well, and speaking of mile markers, there was a game against Benilde St. Margaret's where you dropped 29. So maybe a 30-point game isn't out of reach.
Yeah, I had a lot of times last year where I was just shy of that 30 points, and the joke in the athletic office was, "Are you scared of 30?" And I was like, you know what? I'm starting to feel like I might be, because I'm getting there really close every time, and then it's like, oh, just point shy, just 2 points shy, just 3 points shy. It's definitely gonna get 30 for sure. I have to. That's on the bucket list there.
Get 30 or you'll never hear the end of it in the spring.
Yeah.
And I know you still have a ways to go, but what are you considering as far as options, what you might study at MSU Mankato, and where you see yourself when you decide to transition from basketball?
Yeah, so I'm planning on majoring in the sports medicine area. I do want to become a physical therapist when that basketball time is over. So I'm looking into like exercise science and sports medicine in that field range. And I've kind of always wanted to be a physical therapist since like a young age. So it's just kind of been like a goal and dream that I've carried on for a while. So like outside of basketball, I plan on diving into that. And then I do want to at some point start my own practice within it and have my own little physical therapy area set up and all that. So.
Well, there's one thing that athletics offers is a steady stream of clients when it comes to physical therapy. And I say that because when you're out there, everyone's pushing their bodies to the limits and things happen. So sometimes you have to work your way back from injuries or other setbacks. So I guess physical therapy, if you're looking for a steady line of work, Shantell, I can't think of too many other professions outside of physical therapists that would fit the bill.
Yeah, that's for sure. And that's kind of what jumped out to me, is like in my head, I looked at it as a way I can stay close to sports, especially the sport I love, while doing something that intrigues me and interests me. So it's like, that was a big like jump out for me when I decided like to look into physical therapy, see if I enjoyed it. And then myself, I've had injuries and had to go to physical therapy. So it was kind of like cool to see like how they set up a program and how if you do it, you get better. If you don't, you stay where you're at, kind of thing. So it's always kind of interests me. And just like I said, the overall idea of being able to stay close to sports, especially the one I love.
So there are a few things that I like to ask of my guests in this podcast. Kind of a fun way to learn a thing or two about them outside of sports. So Throughout your time in basketball or volleyball or any other sport, feel free to answer this as you wish.
Mhm.
What would you say was the most exciting moment and the most embarrassing moment?
Okay. I'd say the most exciting moment for me was definitely like last year. I'll go to when we did play Benilde that second time, and we completely turned it around from the first game when we played them. And I came out and I performed, and I just felt great afterwards. Our coaches were happy. Like that was definitely probably one of my most exciting moments, considering our team. I've never been to state, so I don't have one of those cool state memories. I don't have those, but I beating Benilde that second time last year was a big like standout. Like our confidence after that changed in the locker room, everything. It just felt great. And I felt great because I knew I performed pretty well. So that was a big one for me. And I think if we go back to embarrassing moments, what year was my freshman year? So I was still at Burnsville. I was playing like my first half of JV because I did one half JV, two of varsity. I was driving down the side and I shot a layup and I hit the side of the backboard, like not even anywhere near close as to the rim, any of that. And I just remember one of my friends at the time recorded it because he thought I was gonna score, and I actually hit the side of the backboard. So I wasn't able to live that one down for a while. Or even, okay, I have another one. This year, playing Kennedy at home, they're in a zone, and I was like, all right, I'm going to try to get them out of the zone. And I'm a decent shooter, but I don't usually take shots I'm not comfortable with, and my coach had been pushing me to be uncomfortable, so I was like, all right, you know what, whatever. I pulled up from like the volleyball line, and I airballed really badly. And I just remember looking at the crowd and just being like, oh, why did I do that? So that's my new embarrassing moment that hasn't been lived down yet. I've been able to live down the backboard layup, but not the air ball from Kennedy yet.
Well, that friend of yours who had his or her phone out ready to get a big moment of yours, well, you got a big moment.
Yeah.
just not the way you scripted it. Although I do find it fascinating that you started at Burnsville before going to St. Louis Park.
Yeah. I've always lived in Burnsville up until 8th grade. I moved to St. Louis Park. Me and my mom and my siblings. I've always lived at Burnsville, and I was playing high school basketball since 7th grade for Burnsville. So then I kind of just stayed with it even after the transfer. But like they wanted me here, and I was just kind of like on the fence because I was okay with where I was at. I was playing high school in 7th grade, and then the next year I was playing up another level, and then going into my freshman year, I was told I was varsity. So I was like, all right, cool. So then I was kind of staying there, and then it just didn't end up really working out, and I decided to make that transfer to St. Louis Park. And I'm definitely glad I did. Definitely a little sad I didn't do it my freshman year when they told me to, but ooh, I don't know. I enjoyed my experience I had. Like if there is anything I take back, I probably would have transferred my freshman year instead of staying one more year at Burnsville and being able to play with Kendall, being able to play with Reagan that one year and all that. But I still don't regret, I guess, in a way, coming here or not staying there, I guess.
Fair enough. And another question I like to ask of my guests, you might have actually had this pop up with the breakdown questionnaires that they release every year in the guidebook. But I guess I'll give those readers a tease. So what would you say is the most unusual thing about yourself that people wouldn't know if they met you for the first time?
Unusual. A lot of people didn't expect to know that my first sport was actually soccer. I played soccer from kindergarten up until my freshman year. And a lot of people get thrown off about that because obviously they look at my height and what I actually do the most, and they're like, oh, you definitely play basketball or you play volleyball. And it's like, oh, actually I used to play soccer my whole life. But I think that's a big one that catches a lot of people off guard. Or unusual. That's kind of Tricky question. I'm kind of basic, I feel like, for the most part. I guess is the like slang term for it. I'm pretty basic. Yeah. I'd say probably not a lot of people expect to hear that I was a soccer player before I even like really touched a basketball.
Well, Shantell, if it helps, there is no wrong answer to that question. It's more of a question that the people who run the breakdown, they put out there. It's a way to get players to share a little more about themselves outside of what your skill set is. And it goes back to, we get so caught up in rankings and where are you going to school? We get so caught up sometimes, I feel, about the stat lines or the milestones that we forget, hey, you were somebody before you became a basketball player.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So I'm not looking to trick you, obviously, but that certainly fits. And you might be a basic person, but you have an advanced skill set when it comes to sports. I'll give you that much.
Yes, thank you.
What advice would you offer to underclassmen? You know, you're the senior, and I'm sure the newcomers at St. Louis Park, some of them might be looking forward to playing alongside you this upcoming winter. And you also had a solid AAU campaign. I remember when I started covering AAU 2 summers ago, and one of the games I had scheduled was your team, because they give us carte blanche on what games we want to cover. And then I can think of is, who is this kid? Where did she come from? I forget which tournament it was. I just remember you had a really big game, and I'm like, who is this Shantell? She knows what she's doing. But
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, I think advice overall is just like a really good one. It's kind of like a generic one. Is just stay true to yourself and be confident in your abilities. Like I did have lapses in times where I was just like, okay, I don't think I'm as good as people are trying to tell me I am. And it's just like, you have to believe in yourself before you're gonna ever perform the way you want to. And that's a big one. And I think if it was like people at St. Louis Park that I'm a little more closer with into, I definitely would let them in on like I said, I'm a big on the recruitment process just isn't all peaches and cream and all nice and lovely. Like I would love to be really honest with the people I'm with and just tell them like, okay, like the best thing you can do is get yourself out there, because if you're waiting around to like for people to make that decision and come see you and stuff, you're gonna probably be waiting for a while. So it's like, I think just being honest and open, and like I said, I always strive to be the best teammate I can be. So hopefully for those underclassmen that are excited to play with me, possibly this season, like they can go back and tell people like, yeah, she was a great teammate, because that's a big thing of me. Like I don't want to be the teammate that you end up hating, but I also am not gonna like sugarcoat things for you. So hopefully you can take that, because I'm not gonna lie, but I do still want to be there for you and have them feel like they can come to me if they need anything.
And if you don't mind, Shantell, was that something that realization about recruiting, is that something you learned through experience, having to go through that process yourself, or where you mentioned waiting for some D1 offers before you decided to go to MSU Mankato?
Yeah, I definitely would say it does come from realization, especially because it's like, especially my class, like I have a really talented class and the class above us and stuff. It's like, especially because like you said, people post their stuff on Twitter. So it's like you go on Twitter and you're like, oh my gosh, they got another D1 offer. Like, how is this happening? And it's like, it just seems like it's coming so easy to them. But it's like, in reality, like if you really look into it, like there's certain things that are making it come easier to them. And there's people that like don't have necessarily a big name for themselves, like myself or a couple other people like here, or other schools that are just kind of sitting there like waiting to like hope that like people notice them. And it's tough because like I said, I just don't feel like people talk about the recruitment process enough or like tell you how to really navigate it. Like playing for the Suns, my last 2 years, Dre really helped us with that. And that's kind of where that realization started, where he was like, well, you need to put yourself out there. Like, you need to make it so people want to come watch you. Like, you can't just sit around and hope people come sit at your games in Chicago. Like, it doesn't work that way. Like, they have a list, they know who they want to come and see. It's not like they're just kind of wandering around hoping to find a cool game. Like, so I think just definitely from experience, and just like I said, like my junior year, like I had a lot of D1 interests, but not a lot of offers. So it was just kind of like that thing where it's like, okay, just because they say they like you doesn't mean they want you. And that was like a hard like pill to swallow at first. And then once I got over that hump, I realized that it's more about finding where you feel comfortable, like safe at and home, than chasing that big name.
As we continue this conversation, and I've learned a lot about you beyond just your points and rebounds, as we've been talking about this afternoon, but is there anything else about your story in basketball or elsewhere that you'd like to share?
I guess I would just say, like, I'm overall like proud of myself on how I've built on every season. I think if we, I mean, if you are a stats person, if you look back, I haven't taken a step back ever. I've just keep taking steps forward. I feel like I said, it's very important to believe and be proud of yourself. So overall, like, I do give myself a pat on the back for these past years, not stepping back and being or staying the same, and just keep like elevating my game. So I think overall, if there's anything I had to say about myself in the sport, I'd say I'm just proud of myself for how I've continued to grow.
And I'm sure that growth will continue. And I can't wait to see where that ascension leads you as you embark on this senior season. And then at MSU Mankato, I was saying at the start, I think you're going to have a great time with some of the players who are already there. And one of my friends who's part of the coaching staff, even though she claims to be a washed up player now, she had some pretty strong credentials of her own as a player. So going back to believing, it's like, hey, even if your playing career is done, washed up you are not. And if you ever feel bad about yourself, Shantell, I will give you this. I have a grand total of 0 points. So if you ever need a pick me up, just remember that you're well ahead of me in the scoring column.
Yeah, I'll keep that in mind. Thanks.
The only claim to fame I have is 12,000 plus YouTube subscribers, but athletic ability, I'll leave that to the experts like yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely, like I said, just overall being proud of myself is a big thing.
Well, I thank you for sharing some of that proudness of yours with us. And perhaps we'll have to do this again once you get some college experience under your belt, because when I started this series a few years ago, one of the goals was to create that platform. I'm sure you've seen my coverage on YouTube and elsewhere. And oftentimes the hardest part about it, I love covering games, so get me wrong. And it took me some places that I wasn't expecting, including this year where I'm having to tell a lot of producers no because I had already said yes to someone else. There are worse problems to have. But the tough part about doing game coverage, you don't always get a chance to share stories with this degree of depth. And I enjoy that. I like finding out about how a player got to where they are, what they eat for breakfast, or some of these other interests that make them who they are, because you already have plans on what you'll do after you're done playing. And at some point, whether it's yourself going all the way up to Paige Beckers, at some point that transition will come. Simone Augustus made that transition from playing to coaching. There will be a time where you're not focused on wins and points and what you can do to get this team farther in the playoffs. But one thing people won't forget is how you made them feel.
Yeah.
And that's why I do stories like this. And I am grateful that you were willing to share part of your story with us.
Yeah, for sure. I was so thankful to be able to come on here and have that honest and open conversation. That was really cool. And I definitely enjoyed the experience. So thank you for inviting me to have that.
Once again, Shantell, thanks for the time. And I'll have to do my best to circle a St. Louis Park game or two on the calendar, because I know they take part in some invitationals. And I know some of your home games get televised too by Park TV. But if I can make it fit my schedule, perhaps I'll have to pay a visit to see you get that 30-point double-double game.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Well, Shantell Harden, you can see her at St. Louis Park this upcoming winter. And I think you're still playing volleyball, correct?
I am not this year. I am not.
Okay. Well, you'll have to wait a little bit then to see her play.
Yeah.
But come winter, you'll see her hoop it up one more time before she trades the orange and black for the purple and gold at MSU Mankato. And if you'd like to share your story on our podcast, just hit us up on social media at the Mike Peden, or contact us at tsbtelevision@gmail.com. If you have a story, we'd be happy to share it. So until next time, thanks for watching.